Welcome to Ministry in Motion, where we explore best practices for your ministry in the 21st century. I'm Derek Morris.
And I'm Anthony Kent. And whether you're a pastor or a local leader in your church, we're delighted that you've joined us today for Ministry in Motion. Derek, tell us about today's program.
Well, I'm excited. This is fundamental for effective ministry, and that is the topic of effective communication. And our guest, Cliff Goldstein, is a person with a broad experience in communication, so I know this program will be really helpful.
You're right. Cliff is well known as a writer, an editor, and also as a speaker. So communication is certainly part of him.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is almost contagious is the passion that Cliff has for effective communication. And we're going to talk about some principles that will really help our Ministry in Motion viewers.
Looking forward to it, Derek.
And we're glad that you've joined us today. This is an important topic. I'm looking forward to the interview with Cliff Goldstein as we talk about how you can be even more effective in your communication of the good news about Jesus. It could bless your interpersonal relationships as well. So a vital topic. We're glad you're with us. We hope you'll stay tuned for Ministry in Motion. Welcome back to Ministry in Motion. Our topic today, effective communication. Our guest, Cliff Goldstein. Cliff, it's good to have you here.
Glad to be here.
And this is a vital topic, and you're a passionate communicator. I'd love to read your writing, hear you talk. Let's talk about where did that come from in your own life? Where did you find that passion to be an effective communicator?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe ever since I was a little kid, I remember my father always used to talk about how excited I would get about things. Whatever it was, I would, and I think one of the crucial things with communication, and I think you have to believe in what you're communicating. You have to really have a passion for it, believe in it, and then I think there's just something natural that comes through. It's almost like you can't, unless you're a really good actor, you can't fake it. And I think it comes through. So I think whatever communication skills you have, I think someone once said there's no substitute for enthusiasm. And if you truly believe in what you're communicating, believe in what you're talking about, I think I would say true belief can cover a multitude of sins, so to speak.
Well, we'll talk about the ways in which perhaps some people restrict that effective communication, and it seems very stifled or lifeless. But for you, you started writing. You were just a teenager when you started writing.
Well, I guess when you're in school, you have your certain things you're interested in, and I was always a good English major. Wasn't very good in anything else, but I liked to read. I loved books. I read a lot of books. I've got writers and editors in my family that go back for generations, and so pretty much by the time I was young, I knew I was going to be a writer. And apparently I had a gift for it, and I did well in school with it. And so I just wrote and wrote. I often tell people that you really, in the end, nobody can teach you how to write. You teach yourself how to do it by just doing it. Now, if you have somebody who's got more experience, who knows a bit about what they're doing, they can look at your work. They can give you advice and so on, and ideally it would be good advice, though. I remember once I had a creative writing teacher, and he once said something in class that I disagreed with, and then when I caught him on it, I think he realized I was right, and he said something to the effect of, well, nobody says you have to believe anything I say. Well, come on, this was college. I was paying, I don't remember what I was paying per credit hour. I wanted to, but the point, though, is in this field, in writing, it's an art, it's a craft, it's not so much, it's not like math. And so there is a certain, just certain subjectivity. Well, there's a great deal of subjectivity to it. But in the end, you have to believe in you have to have a gift for it, and then believe in what you're doing. And then you will, with writing, you ultimately teach yourself.
Now, there was a significant turn in your writing experience because originally you were pretty much writing as a secular writer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a whole long story. You don't have to get into that right now. But when I was in my early 20s, my life was writing fiction. Nothing mattered to me. I just wrote and wrote and read. And unfortunately, the writing, the book I was working on a novel, it became my God. And even though I spent a lot of time writing, I ended up having to destroy this book, burnt this book, gave my heart to Christ, and for about 2 years I did almost no writing at all, and I had died to it, even though I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, because writing was the only thing I was interested in, was really the only thing I had any kind of gift for, only thing I really poured myself into, and I had to give it up. So I died to it. Then one day the Lord opened the door, I got back to doing it, and I've been pretty much doing it ever since. And the more I do it, the more I work at it, the harder I push myself. I was talking to even some young girl this morning in the building, obviously is a very good writer, and I was telling her, you need to break out of you need to do more. You need to get out and just write some articles on your own, push yourself, take chances with it, and expand and so on. And I've always done that with my writing. I've tried to take chances, push myself further than I might think I was able to go, and then see what happens. If it works out, great. If not. There's always the delete button. You know?
And you've been working as an editor of international journals.
Sure.
You're now working with a Bible study resource.
Sure.
But you brought that passion to everything you're doing.
Well, I really think in the end, good writing, good communication, that it boils down to certain fundamental principles, regardless of what the medium that you are in. If it's disjointed, people can't follow it, it seems tepid, doesn't seem like it's real, then I don't care whether you're on a radio, whether you're preaching in front of an audience, whether you're writing, whether you're doing dance and communicating through dance or whatever, it's going to come through. So yeah, there are basic principles that, even though I don't write fiction anymore, or not much, I should say, there are certain basic principles that I try to bring into it, which I think are also very important in preaching. Same thing as well in preaching.
And we're going to come to some of those basic principles as we continue. Let's talk about people who've inspired you and might inspire some of our viewers as great communicators. Are there any biblical models for you where you look and go, that's great, that's effective communication?
Well, of course, I guess this could almost sound cliche. Jesus and the clearness and the simplicity of his stories. Even though people might not know deep theology and so on, I mean, you knew where he was coming from, you knew what he was saying, and he got right to the point. They were very, and the beautiful thing about it was they could be very deep. And, you can, goodness, how many books have been written on the parables, from every angle and so on. And yet, at the same time, very simple that anybody could follow them as well. But I often tell people, too, when I especially meet people who are interested in good writing, I say, just read good writing. Just find, there are a lot of very good secular magazines that you could read or whatever. Just find people who you believe are good writers, do good, write well, and just read it. And you can't help but over time imbibe of it. And especially if you take the time to look at it, you read something and think, man, that was very good. Well, then go back, why was it so good? What did they do? And if you're proactive on that, if you think about it, it can't help but affect your own writing and make you, or whatever you're going to do, your communication.
So effective communication begins with a passion to communicate, having something to say.
Yeah, well, that's,
but then kind of you can catch this good writing, good communication as you expose yourself to it.
You find people who you think are good. I hate that. There was a story one time about someone told George Vandeman, which was an excellent communicator. And these ministers were watching him give a series somewhere. And then later, some minister got up and not only just, I forgot exactly how it was, but he was so miming George Vandeman that he even said something like, now, you say to me, Elder Vandeman, what, and of course it was somebody else's name, but he was so miming him that he kind of lost it. But you could take it too far, but find people who you think are good,
And learn from them.
Yeah, and learn from them. But you have to, see, in the end, and this comes back to sincerity, you gotta make it your own.
We'll come back to that after the break. You're going to learn some things, make it your own, principles that can help you to be an effective communicator. We'll be right back with more Ministry in Motion. Welcome back to Ministry in Motion. Our topic today, effective communication. Our guest, Cliff Goldstein. Cliff, having a passion to say something, learning from other people. Let's talk about if I watch other people who communicate well or read good writing, what are some basic principles of effective communication I'll discover?
Well, let me give you one example of something. I have a long ride in my car every day. About 45 minutes each way, a little longer coming home. And in 1996, I started getting lectures from a group called the Teaching Company. Okay, and it cost a fair amount of money, though. You get them on sale. It's Teach 12. I'm doing a little promo for them. But they've got philosophy, science, history, theology. Though the theology stuff, I'll have to say, is pretty bad. But all that aside, but they go around the country and they get deem the best college professors. I mean, it goes through quite a vetting process. And these guys come to the D.C. area, because that's where it's located, and they lecture on their topics. And I've got, literally, in my iPhone, I have about 1,000, and in my pocket here, 1,000 lectures, about 500 hours of these. And some are better than others, but some of them are fabulous. And when I tried to think, because I'm interested in communication, I'm a preacher, I'm a writer, and I'm very much interested in and I'm a didactic. I've got points I'm trying to get across. I get done speaking, I get done writing. I want somebody to learn something. I want them to know what I'm saying. Whether they agree with me or not, well, ideally, I'd like them to agree with me, but they're not going to know whether they agree or not unless they're clear about what I'm saying. And some of these teachers are excellent. And I've noticed 2 or 3 points that I see in all of them that are good. The first thing is they know their topics, okay? They just know them.
That's basic.
Yeah, they are experts, okay? And I'm not saying you have to be but just you have to know what you're talking about. Don't go further than you know. Okay, don't go further. I like to talk about quantum physics, okay? I'm very much interested in that. But I am hardly an expert, but I can talk about it on a very superficial level, and that's fine. But I won't go any further. There are other things I think I could talk philosophy. I could talk about that a little deeper, but don't go further than you know, but know what you're talking about. And these people really know what they're talking about. It's very, very obvious. Number 2, you could tell they do have a passion for it. They really do. They know it. They've dedicated their life to this. Some of them, it just comes through. It's very, very clear. And third, and this is really, in my thinking, absolutely the most important point in communication. I don't care. You could have all your ducks in a row. You could have everything else. You could be eloquent. You could be handsome or beautiful. And you can have a singing, beautiful voice and sex appeal or whatever. And everybody's interested in looking at you and so on. But if your thinking isn't logical, rational, and coherent, you lose them. I edit this publication on this Bible study guide. And quite frankly, it doesn't really matter to me how bad the writing is. Really, I can fix, in terms of the style. If the style's not that good, I can fix it. I don't even frankly care how bad the theology is. I can fix the theology. This stuff could be edited. But what I cannot edit and what I don't edit, what I basically just throw out and start from scratch is if it's not logical, if it's not coherent, if one thought doesn't flow to the other. It's almost, I've often thought a really logical sermon, and you could take this too far, it could be cold and sterile, and I don't want to push something too far, but it should almost work, a sermon, an article or something, almost with like a mathematical equation. One thing follows after another, and you could see, okay, you say A, and then you say B, and you see, wow, B really follows from A. Right. And then from B you say C, and C really follows, and on and on and on. And ideally, You know, it should, I mean, you could
like
take...
a journey, is it? A logical journey?
Yeah, you're moving from one thought to another, and it's deadly. It's deadly. See, one of the things, too, when every now and then when I do talk to groups about writing, one of the most crucial things I say is transition, is moving from one point to another, because if you're not following logically, you're talking about one thing and then you're somewhere, and you lose them. You lose them. So important above anything else is logical flow of thought, whether you're speaking, whether you're writing, whatever you're doing, it's this logical flow. And I'm not totally sure you can teach that to people. You can maybe help hone it in. Some people just have a gift to work logically, and other people, I used to edit Liberty magazine, and have a lot of lawyers write for me at times. And you would often think lawyers could think logically, and maybe when they're
probably some of them do, right?
Yeah, up on their feet. But I'd get these articles from these lawyers, and I couldn't follow their logic. I couldn't follow the reason. And as I said, it's deadly. You have to make sure that what you're writing or speaking, point A, point B. I heard someone say this pastor preaches a Columbus sermon. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't.
Columbus service. They said Columbus didn't know where he was going when he left.
Oh, no.
He didn't know where he was going when he was
serious.
going, and he didn't know where he was when he got there. And I'm telling you, that's deadly.
When we get back from the break, we want to talk more about these principles, but being an expert, having something to say, knowing the limits of your knowledge. Next point was passion. And the third, logical progression. If you just took those 3 points and thought about effective communication, whether you're speaking or writing, it could move you to the next level. We'll have more insights for you right after the break with more Ministry in Motion. Welcome back to Ministry in Motion. Our topic today, effective communication. Our guest, Cliff Goldstein. Cliff, always a joy to talk with you. Passionate communicator. We want to talk in this last section about what are some practical things. We've talked about, knowing your subject, having a passion, having logical progression. What are some to-do things a person says, I want to communicate more effectively?
Okay, well, I think, too, one of the first things you have to remember is that communication is not so much a science as much as it is an art. And, there was a saying that good writers, and I'm using writing, but it could be preaching, it could be any kind of communication. Good writers have to follow all the rules. Great writers can ignore them. Okay, in other words, you got to be careful. And when you start giving formulas and so on, it's not formulaic per se. You've got to have an intuitive feel. There's some general principles. There's some principles to follow, but in the end, you have to really just sort of surrender to God, hope that the Spirit leads you, and be true to yourself. But at the same time, too, there's some principles that I do think you need to think about. Number one, whether you're writing or preaching, one of the first things is get a good introduction. Get something. When you write, you're in a dentist's office. You're in the dentist, you're waiting to have somebody drill a hole in your head, in your teeth, or pull your teeth out, and you're flipping through a magazine, and you don't have much time, and you open and you read the first paragraph.
And you decide whether you're going to read it?
Yeah, within that first paragraph, are you going to pull them in? Nobody's got time anymore. People don't have, are busy. So you read that first paragraph, you pull it in, and the same thing, I guess you have a little more of a captive audience when you're preaching a sermon. But then again, they can they can pull out their iPhones.
Fall asleep.
They can pull out they could be texting, there's a lot more distractions in the church today than there were. It used to be you could pick up and read the hymnal, or read through your Bible, which I guess would probably be the best thing to do if you're not going to pay attention to the sermon. But, I guess the best thing would be try to find a story, try to find something to pull them in, to grab their attention. Then this is sometimes called the magic nonfiction formula. And even though this is more for journalism, I just still think the principle, when I preach, a lot of my preaching, I don't have time to write a whole lot of sermons. Every now and then some topic will really catch me, and I'll just sit there and I'll write a sermon. But a lot of times I take articles that I've written or chapters from books and so on, and then turn them into a sermon, but you have something to pull them in.
Right.
Okay, and then they call that your lead. Then you get what is called in nonfiction the slant. Like you pull them in, and then you basically tell them what you're going to talk about. Okay, you say, this is a sermon about how, we are saved by faith without the deeds of the law, or whatever it's going to be. And then you tell them what you're going to tell them, okay? Then you go through, and then you build your case. And I said, here's where I think the logic is important.
That's where the logic is important.
One of the things I tell people with writing, and I suppose see, this is different. I can get away with a whole lot more mistakes in preaching than I can with writing. You've got a little bit more leeway with writing. In some ways, I think preaching. In some ways, I think the articles I wrote, if I stood up there and preached them almost verbatim, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. I got to be a little more freer, a little more looser. And you want to give
it's a different style.
Yeah, and you want to let you don't want to lock down the Holy Spirit. You want to be open. The Spirit can move. Such thing you move in a certain.
But that logical progression is still important.
Yeah, it's still very important. And one of the things I tell people with writing, and I wouldn't want to put this, I guess in principle with speaking, I say there's nothing neutral in writing. In other words, every comma, every syllable, every word, every sentence, every paragraph, every page, if it's not adding to what you're saying, if it's not helping you get your point across, then it's diluting it. Okay, it's diluting it. Now, as I said, I think this is much more important in writing than in preaching. I think it's important
in preaching too.
Yeah, I mean, you can deviate a bit and go off and you tell a quick, funny. Sometimes, you're looking at the clock and you suddenly realize your sermon isn't quite long enough. You got to have a little filler in there or something. I'd say be careful with it, but the bottom line is you got a little more freedom with speaking. But the point is, you have your lead, you pull them in, you get your slant, you let them know what it's going to be about, and then boom, 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 you make your points, you build your case, however long it takes, boom. And then you come to your ending, and a lot of times you'll see in nonfiction, they'll tie it up. They'll bring something back to the beginning and sort of like a nice thing to tie it up. So you got almost an organic whole there. Like a cell has all these parts that work to make it, alive. We'll almost look at a sermon or an article or something as an organic whole, and you want all the pieces to be where they belong and so on. And that's why, too, I've been writing professionally for 30-some years now. And I'd like to think I'm getting better, though I guess I get to the age you start getting older and then things start, the brain cells start dying. And though it is interesting, too, a lot of the great writers did their best stuff in their 20s.
Really?
Albert Einstein did some of his, not just writers, some of his best scientific. He came up with with special relativity in his 20s. It took him 8 years later to come up with general relativity, but he was still very young.
Well, there's a message there for our viewers. You don't have to wait till you're old to be an effective communicator.
I think one of the things is, at least with the scientists, is that they're younger. They haven't had as much time to get caught up into the dogma of the time they were still. And that might even work for you younger here and so on. If God gives you gifts, you flesh them out and you work on them and you try to be your own person and take your unique gifts and seek to develop them the best that you can.
Cliff, thanks for a challenging conversation about effective communication. If you've been challenged, I want to invite you to go to our website, ministryinmotion.tv. You can watch the program again. Maybe suggest one of your colleagues might watch it too. And while you're there, we want to tell you about a valuable resource. If you're a pastor of a local congregation, you may be eligible for a complimentary subscription to Ministry, an international journal for pastors. It goes to 200 countries around the world, 80,000 leaders. Perhaps your ministry could be enhanced. So go to our website, check out the details, see if you're eligible for this complimentary subscription. If you're an elder of a local church, there's also some valuable resources at our website that can help you to be an effective communicator, an effective minister in your area of ministry. MinistryInMotion.tv is our website. Again, thanks so much for joining us for Ministry in Motion today. I hope you'll be blessed as you continue to grow in your service for God. Until next time, may God richly bless you in your ministry for Him.